Hi, I'm Mike Maloney, and welcome to another CSRM Podcast. Today's episode is hosted by Dr. Greg Linville.
Engineer, which, standing here today, obviously a lot has happened since that thought, but I began to get involved with Camp All-American as a college student, and I knew the Lord, was walking with the Lord, and was growing in my faith, knew enough, I guess, to get hired as a summer counselor. As a college student, kind of late. We all know we're struggling probably to find people and leaders. And so I was hired in May, like right before camp started. And one of those last-minute guy hires, like, yes, we always need guys. Come on. Yeah, do you know Jesus? Yeah, can you run and play? Great, you're hired. And so that was me, and was able to get in. And God really used what we do at camp and what you guys are so familiar with in sports ministry to change my life. And it really was... for the first time for me being able to use gifts that I felt like I had to serve him faithfully in that way. And actually the first time was a part of a community that was really, truly seeking the Lord together and really working to make God known together. And then up until that point, my walk had been an individual thing. And so I love what we get to do together. And I know you guys do as well, and it makes a huge difference in the lives of the people that you are in contact with on a daily basis. But in my sort of career or vocation and being a part of sports ministry for the last, I guess, 19 years almost, I've learned a couple things, and most of that is, as you know, through failure. Is how I've learned most of the lessons that I've learned and the things that I now think are most important. And so tonight I really want to tell you about that. And really one of the main thing is really over the last 5 or 6 years, I've been sort of confronted and convicted and really asking the Lord to do a work in my life when it comes to the area of my humility. And that's maybe not a popular topic in today's society, or maybe we call it something else, and maybe we've heard that word before and think, okay, is that, I think I've heard people talk about people being humble, and those are people that just, I guess, seem sad or down or don't really know, I don't know, they say they're not good at things. Is that what humble people do? And I've struggle to sort of understand what that is. And now I really do feel like the pursuit of humility is at basically the central pursuit of my walk with the Lord. And the reason why, and my hope for you tonight, is not so much to tell you something brand new that you've never heard before, or to, and I think that's most of us as we're in church and as we're hearing things, we're not often confronted with just brand new truth, right? The Bible is the Bible, so we're just, trying to understand and know what God's word is as he has revealed himself to us. And so I'm not going to say anything magical to you that maybe you haven't heard before, but I know for all of us as we're in ministry, and as you think about trying to walk with the Lord faithfully, I think all of us would say, man, we really want to experience joy in our life. And man, we would really want to experience rest in our lives. We really would want for us to be able to live in a fulfilled way and really feel the deep satisfaction of Christ as we walk with him. And also we want to be used in a what we say a kingdom kind of difference. Like, Lord, I want you to use me for some purpose and for some reason on this earth to make a difference, that your kingdom would grow, that people would come to know you. And I would think that all of you in this room would sort of jump on that and say, yeah, that's us. I would love to experience joy and rest and fulfillment and feel like I'm being used by the Lord. And I feel like maybe tonight my only hope is really to connect the idea of even pursuing humility with those ideas, and for you guys to walk out even more, maybe convinced of that thought as well. So I want to start even by backing up a couple of years. I know we've been talking about COVID and how that's gone for all of us, and everybody's got a really unique story in that and your own specific and particular struggles and sort of how that impacted you. maybe your personal walk with the Lord, your church. There's been lots of relationships that have, come under duress because of the last couple of years. Getting sick that we know, and we're hurt, and maybe even passing away through the last few years. And I know that's touched all of us in some significant way. And it's crazy to think that it's been 2 years. So that's it, 2 years. It feels like those 2 years have equaled the rest of my life in terms of the conversations I've had, the discussions, the learning, the amount of talking, all the decisions that I've made. I think those 2 years were worth the other 37 years of decisions that I made. And so it was, 2 years ago when we went home and we're sort of on lockdown. For those first couple of weeks, I know it was hard in some ways, but honestly, our church was saying, hey, we can't do anything right now, so we're just at home, right? So in some ways, that was kind of nice. It was like, I'm at home. I've spent more time with my kids. I've exercised more. I've been outside more. Like, there's, really good things that were kind of coming from that. But as that ended and we kind of came back to our office, I think around middle of May of that year, it was all of a sudden we went from, my own schedule and all that to now all of a sudden faced with the brutal reality of like, okay, are we going to actually officially have camp this summer, right? Are we going to move forward with our ministry? Are we going to do this thing in light of all the turmoil and all the things that are going on and all the decisions? Are we actually going to do this? And I underestimated how, when we came back from that, how different all of the people on our team were going to be on all the spectrum of that, right? Of, hey, no, we're stupid for opening because, this is dangerous and real people are getting sick too. No, we're stupid for not opening because, this is, mission is important and we've got to do something here. And I find myself in the middle of that going, okay, what do I do? And that began sort of a course for me of many months where I began to try to answer that question on my own, all by myself. And I would take the weight of what I knew my coworkers were thinking and the weight of what my supervisor was thinking and the weight of all the articles I was reading and all the charts and graphs I was looking at and trying to project and trying to understand and trying to comprehend all that was going on in our world. And I went home and was basically just overwhelmed by even having to navigate that type of decision. And it really revealed and flared up for me how much I put my trust and weight in what people I love think about me. And it revealed how much I was living an independent life from God at that moment. I was leaning on my own understanding. I was trusting in what I could figure out. I was doing my own research. I was thinking I could figure out whatever it was that was going on at that time. And it left me, maybe like a lot of you, anxious. Maybe as I look back even now, depressed. And feeling the weight, again, of all of that responsibility and the constant need I had for approval and for affirmation from the people that were around me. And we all know that was, as we just talked about, I wanted to experience joy and rest and fulfillment and feel like I was doing the right thing. And here I am, anxious and depressed and not knowing what to do and totally trying to figure that out on my own. And meanwhile, the people that I care about by trying to do that. And so what was the problem there? I think I could look at that in a bunch of different ways. And one is maybe, okay, did I need more trust? Did I need more faith? Should I have prayed more? There's a lot, fill in the blank, so many different things that were there. But when I sort of boil that down, as I've had a couple of years now to really think back on that, my struggles and issues stemmed, as I said, from my independence from God and my dependence on myself. And at the most basic level, if you think about in Scripture, in the beginning, when people went their own way and decided they knew better and leaned on themselves, we would call that pride. The sin of pride and thinking that I could do this life and I could lead and I could be time. I was just trying to be faithful and figure things out. But my pride is what led me to that place. And it's my pride that led me to the place of being overwhelmed and being anxious and not knowing what to do because I was independent. I was trying to do that on my own. I was trying to be a leader, right? That's what leaders do. They figure out solutions and they make decisions and they make the hard call, and right? That's what we're supposed to be doing. And at that time I realized, man, I've drifted in how I lead into a place of self-sufficiency. And it left me probably like a lot of you in a place of inability to do what I needed to do as a leader and as a minister. And so what I'd like to do even tonight is just unpack that just a little bit more. As we think about gospel centricity for Reach, and just how much we want the gospel to be the core of everything that we do. I really think, and this is just sort of the statement that I came up with just for this tonight, I believe gospel centricity is rooted in and empowered by Christ's humility. And that may not make a ton of sense, even with those words. It's not a Christ-like humility. It's not me just trying to imitate Christ. It is literally the humility of Christ that is the power for us to be gospel-centered. It's us being rooted in what he did for us and his humility that actually allows us to do what we need to do and to experience all those things that we talked about. So nothing, I believe, can be more core to following Christ, as we think about what that looks like, than following him in his humility. And so let's look at that a little bit. Now, when we look, famous verse that you guys probably know about when you think about humility is probably Philippians 2, right, 5 through 8, somewhere in there. And I won't sort of unpack or read, all of that right now. But as we look about that, it talks about how, Christ did not count his equality with God something he grasped, right? But what did he do? He emptied himself in the form of a servant and became obedient to the point of death. So when we look at even Christ's first move, as he's in heaven, in the Trinity, in perfect relationship, and the plan of salvation is being unfolded, the very first move of Christ is to empty himself of his place in heaven and say, no, I'm going to go to earth, and I'm going to walk a life as a man, and I'm going to fulfill every promise and every thing that was said would happen. I'm going to live a perfect life. I'm going to do that. It was in his humility that paved the way for our salvation, for us to even know God again. And so it is his leaving his throne and even submitting to the Father and not fighting for value or importance, but really, as we see that, really, in our words, we say dying to self, emptying himself in the form of a bondservant is what opened the door for us to actually know him and follow him. Listen to these verses. I'm just going to plow through a lot of these verses. If we think about the humility of Christ, these are Christ's words, and this is what he said about himself in many different cases. So don't try to write these down or follow along. I'm going to do this real fast. John 5:19, the Son can do nothing by himself. John 5:30, by myself I can do nothing. I judge only as I hear, and my judgment is just, for I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me. John 5:41, I do not accept praise from men. John 6:38, for I have come down from heaven not to do my will. John 7:16, my teaching is not my own. John 7:28, I am not here on my own. John 8:28, I do nothing on my own. John 8:42, I have not come on my own, but he sent me. John 8:50, I am not seeking glory for myself. John 14:10, the words I say to you are not just my own. John 14:24, these words you hear are not my own. That's Jesus. He came and he lived and he died and he's perfect. He is God. He is fully God, fully man. He's a part of the Trinity, yet the life that he lived is saying, no, not my words, not my life, not my will, even though he had every right for those things to be true. He emptied himself. And it was through his humility and through his death on the cross, we even have a right relationship and access to the Father again because of him. So in his dependence and in his abiding and in his submission, in his just being content to do nothing other than what the Father had sent him to do, is what made it possible for us to know him. Listen to this quote. I read this book by Andrew Murray. It's called Humility. I'd recommend it to everybody. I think I've read it every year for the last maybe 7 or 8 years. It's really transformed my thinking on this topic itself. He says in there, Jesus teaches us where true humility begins and finds its strength, in the knowledge that it is God who works all in all, that our place is to yield to him in perfect resignation and dependence, in full consent to be and to do nothing of ourselves. So humility, again, is not putting ourselves down. And there's, even I love C.S. Lewis. He says humility is not what thinking less about ourselves. It's thinking of ourselves less, right? So that's one way to say that. I love, really, Charles Spurgeon has one way. He says humility is to make a right estimate of oneself. And I love the way that is, because the right estimate of us is that we can do nothing apart from Christ. That is the actual power that we have. It is only because he is the one who came and lived and died that we have any ability to make a difference in this world. And when we get outside of that, we're following our first brother Adam and saying, no, I think I know better than God. I think I'm going to walk my own way. I think I'm going to come up with my own decision. I think I'm going to do this, the way I think it's best. But even Christ himself said, not my will, not my words. This is not my life. I'm sent by the Father. And that is, unfortunately, for us, the way of following him, is doing that very same thing, is that life of humility. So a couple other verses, I'll just get you to write these down. I'd love for you to study these on your own. I'm not going to have time to kind of walk through each of these, but we mentioned Philippians 2, 3 through 8. As we look at even Paul saying, hey, imitate Christ, like follow him in this way. And then he says, he did not count equality with God something to be grasped, but through his humility, he emptied himself, and being obedient even to the point of death on the cross. In John 15, this is Jesus saying, hey, abide in me. Remain in me. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Every branch that doesn't remain in me is cut off. Every branch that does remain in me bears fruit, and even 30, 60, 90-fold. And at the end of that, I love this. Jesus says, these things I say to you, and do you know how he finishes that? So why? Do you know why? He says, so that my joy may be in you, and so that your joy may be full. And a lot of times we think that following Christ in dying to self, emptying ourselves, that doesn't sound like the fun thing to do, right? That's not the cool leadership, platform, influence kind of thing that we get to do. But God says, I want my joy in you, and that's what you need. You need me. You need my satisfaction. Well, here it is. Abide in me, for apart from me, you can do nothing.
The CSRM Podcast is a production of CSRM and their production house, Overwhelming Victory. Dr. Craig Linville is the executive producer, and Scott Stedman is the associate producer and editor. To learn more about CSRM, visit csrm.org. For more information about Overwhelming Victory, visit overwhelmingvictory.org. The CSRM Podcast is the flagship member of the podcast network Overwhelming Victory Radio. For more information on Overwhelming Victory Radio, or to listen to our partner podcasts, visit overwhelmingvictory.org/OV Radio. For CSRM Podcasts, I'm Mike Maloney. Have a blessed day.